I read the book. It was an interesting book. Um, I have to say, it did say he did say that you have to read the book a number of times before you really get the truly understanding of what he was trying to say and everything. But the first time I read it, it was pretty interesting because it seemed like he was sincere about what he wrote about. I mean, like, there's no doubt about it. I don't know too much about the person, you know, except a little bit of what I did research. Of course, you've been following and researching this person for a while, and you speak highly of this individual who wrote the book. How do you say his name? Because I can never say the names right. I can never say the title's name right, or I can never say the name of the individual.
Jehovah Prophecy, and Michel Desmarquet.
Yeah, yeah. I I want to say every time I try to say it, I get it tongue tied. But it was an interesting big book. I'll be honest. A lot of the stuff that I read in there, I was kind of shocked because I was like, this is almost what some of what's written in the Book of Enoch, like how Enoch was taken to heaven, and you know heaven can be portrayed in this book, their planet. Um, it was interesting because he talked a lot of great detail about what his senses, his smells, what he smelled, what he tasted, what he felt, what he looked at. He basically described his five senses over there, and
Yes.
um, it's obvious that. And let me ask you: do you get the feeling he was the first one there, or do you think there were others that went there before him?
I actually think that Enoch was there before he did. Um, and I think there are probably others who were there before him as well, besides Enoch.
What gives you that feeling?
Because I got a feeling because the Theubans or the ETs have been watching and guiding us throughout history, not
Right.
just since the days of Enoch, but
Okay.
since the days of earlier than the days of Enoch. So I think there must be other people who they have taken to their planet, and I think he is definitely not the first one.
Okay. Yeah, because it's like some of the stuff that they described because they said that they stopped at different planets because of how they were trying to help the different planets that they were going to and different stuff like that. And I think on the last video, you said they were about what 9 feet tall, right? Those individuals.
Yes.
That's about the same height that Goliath was described in the Bible. About that's how tall he was, depending on how you looked at the measurements. I know that the measurements back then kind of depended on like that, like your forearm or your fingers to your elbows or something like that. So it was just different for different people. But when I read that book, um, because in the beginning he says, he talks about how some people would take it as science fiction, right?
Mhm.
And you said this book last time was written in 1989 or something like that, and the English version came out in what 93 or something like that. I think that's what you
Yes.
said.
Yes.
So yeah, so you know, science fiction was a big thing. Back in the day. Period. I mean, even till now. I mean, it's starting to change a little bit, but it's still a big thing, and that he didn't describe it like they were like so technologically advanced in us because of how smart they were. Is because of how they worked well with each other, because they didn't really have crimes either. They weren't really fighting crimes on their planet. They kind of nipped that in the bud a long time ago. Is that what you understood too when you read that book?
Well, I think this book is very unique from a different perspective because it really uncovers all the mysteries of the world. So I think from that perspective, that's the thing that got me. Not the. I mean, I kind of wanted to know the ancient histories of Earth and all, where the people came from,
Mm.
but the most kind of interesting topic to me was regarding how the mysteries of the Earth were kind of like the way that they are right now. And I mean, um, if you look at the politics and things like that, it's really something touched upon by this book as well.
Yeah, it did talk about that. So so give me like one good example. Why do you strongly believe this book? Because I the reason, because see, me personally, I believe in aliens. You know, I believe in extraterrestrials. But I do a lot of reading and researching our ancient civilizations when they talk about these gods and goddesses and stuff like that. And I know the big um, thing right now is that, you know, and we talked, me and you talked about this on Facebook too. I posted something about Planet Nibiru, and I said that there is no cuneiform tablet that says that the Anunnaki came from Planet Nibiru. And the reason why I say that is because most people go off the idea that that there's a planet Nibiru because of Zachariah Sitchin, because of what he wrote in his book, The 12th Planet. And he says, you know, he came up with some kind of his theories that said that, you know, the Anunnaki came from planet Nibiru. He says that the Sumerians say that, right? So what I wanted to do when I first heard that, I was like, oh, that's interesting. You know, like, wow, I can't take away from that. That's, somebody said that they did their research. That's what they said, right? So when I started to wonder where is the actual tablet that says that, because I found out later on that you can go online and find the actual tablets, and you can see what tablets goes with what story and so on and so forth and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, I want to see the tablet that actually says that the Sumerians said that the Anunnaki came from planet Nibiru. And there isn't no tablet. And you actually said, you said, well, if you don't think they came from another planet, where do you think they came from? Do you think that 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 planet in that book is the same thing as Nibiru, or do you think they're two different things? Because I just wanted to make sure that I understand what you were saying in that comment.
One thing is that when people read the books written by the author that you just mentioned, and also by other authors who study ancient scripts like the Sumerian texts, I think they have to keep that in mind that they're prone to different interpretations and also distortions, and because people might just read legends into the ancient tablets or put that into ancient scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
What we have here in this book, Thiaoouba prophecy or Jehovah prophecy, is that this is something that a book that contains specific verifiable facts
Right.
that you can really relate to the discoveries that just happened recently after the author wrote a book,
Mm.
such as the far side of the moon and also life on Mars, and also what happened during World War II. Um, in terms of the Syrian text, also the research is done by people who study the ancient histories of mankind or humankind, that you have to really like keep that in mind, that they may be relying on something that's really just a ancient scripture of a legend, not necessarily something that reflect what actually happened in the past. So I think that's one message I want to send to the people who really do a lot of research on those books by the author that you just mentioned.
Right, right. Well, see, no, see, because I'm not trying to take away from the author. I'm not trying to take away from anybody. It's just that, you know, you hear so much. Hey, well, I did my research. I did my research. So you want to be just as thorough as they were. So you want to read the same materials that they read. And then when you do that, you know, and stuff doesn't align up correctly, then you look, then you're either going to believe what you want to believe, or you're going to believe on what your research just determined. And what I mean by that is, you know, the planet that's in that book, um, I don't see it being Nibiru. Uh, um, I could go on about that, the reason why, but I'm not here to discuss Nibiru too much. But I wanted to, the book the book is amazing, okay, because it does talk about some stuff and it has some relations with Enoch and stuff like that. And I thought it was pretty interesting. So I was like in the back of my head, well, if this guy is either really good at what he's writing about, or two, or there was a couple of things that actually ran through my head. I said, or two, he knows the ancient text very well, which that means he had to read all the ancient texts and stuff like that. And I don't think he even actually mentions any of the ancient text in the book, or at least I can't remember or anything like that. And or three, um, he's uh he's a really good storyteller. Let me ask you, have you experienced anything like that? Like what he's experienced? Like, are you an abductee, or do you just feel strongly because because I know you talked about you just picked up the book and the first time you read it, you didn't really look into it, and then it took you another time to get into it, right?
Well, I didn't experience anything on my own. I didn't have any encounters or haven't had any encounters
Mm.
with extraterrestrials yet. And the first time I read the book, I was actually shocked by the content, especially the part about Jesus Christ,
Mm-hmm.
the tomb of Jesus in Shingo Village, Japan. I actually looked it up on the internet and found that there is actually indeed a tomb of Jesus in Japan.
Is that the one
Oh,
with the that has that looks like a keyhole? Like
yeah,
yeah, like it's like in a little island or something like that, and like it's like a keyhole entry thing.
it's
I seen that. I'm not sure if that's
yeah.
what
There
you're
there are a
talking
lot
about.
of photos on the internet, and people took videos as well of their visits to the tomb in Japan. And
How do you spell that so I can look it up?
the tomb of Jesus in Shingo Village, Japan, Shingo.
Okay.
And what made me so going into the book was that I don't have a lot of free time to read all the other volumes, different volumes of thick books that might be just a fictional fictional novels, or people who do a lot of research, relying on what they believe to be like authentic sources, and I really want to cut the corners and to get a shortcut and to be more direct at finding the one book that can really connect all the dots together.
Right,
Um,
right.
Ancient civilizations and modern history and the politics and human energy field and health in general, as well as the spirituality and ancient scriptures in the Bible. So I, yeah, because I work full time, I really don't have a lot of time to read the researches of other people. So I just wanted to rely on something that I believe to be um, reliable and authentic, and to from that point and to do additional research and expand my horizon of different facts and also different possibilities. So this is my perspective. So that's why after verifying so many facts stated in the book, I was convinced that this book really answers all the questions that people may have in their lifetime. So I decided to really promote the book. Actually, before I do that, before I did that, I I don't know if you noticed that in the postscript, it says there are more incredible things that Michel Desmarquet was not allowed to write in the book. So I was very curious about what that was. So I went to him and asked him in person what he didn't put in the book, what
Oh
he was
wow.
not allowed to write in the book. So that's the whole reason for me tracking him down, because I thought this book is so amazing, and what else is there that he believed that it was more shocking to him that he wasn't that he was instructed not to put in the book. So after I learned that information, that gave me the motivation of promoting the messages in the book, hoping to turn the world to a better world in the future.
So you can't even get some of that information out, huh?
I wrote an article referencing passages and certain sentences in the Bible and
Mhm.
also the Book of Enoch, hinting what that message is, and giving as many clues as possible regarding the specific information that he wasn't allowed to write in the book. So that article, I think you might be interested in taking a look as well.
Yeah, send me that article. Where can I find it at?
It's on the website. It's titled the Second Coming of Christ.
The
So
second
something like that.
coming
Yeah.
of Christ. I'll type that in with your name, and hopefully it'll pop up. No, that's right. That's right because uh when you sent when you gave me the PDF file to read that book, before I read it, because before I read any book, I always research the researcher, and I always research, um, I read the reviews and comment sections just to see what I to look out for, so that way I don't miss anything and stuff like that. And one thing that I felt was this in he was just an ordinary person. He just had an experience, and he was told to do something, and he did it. It's no different than any of these other prophets that we have in the biblical times, in the ancient Mesopotamian times, or any of the other times, any of the prophets from the past. They were told to do something from somebody that was a messenger of God, or God Himself, or quote unquote God Himself. And um, he was given that opportunity also. And what I liked about it was the fact that he came back and said that he was able to give us information. It seems like every so often somebody is there to give us information. And it says throughout all the ancient texts that people are going to be giving us messages throughout, until the time of, whenever that faithful day comes. And every time we get those messages, a lot of people tend to ignore them, or call it a fraud, or call it crazy, because they didn't experience it. I've never experienced an abduction or anything like that. You said you haven't. And but like I said earlier, how can I deny that person's experience because of my personal feelings? And I didn't have any personal feelings. I'm just basically saying that as an example, because I actually had to read the book. A lot of people will read the title of the book, or read a little summary of the book, and have a whole opinion based off just one or two paragraphs, and won't take the whole time to read the book. So I thank you for letting me read that book. I'm going to read it again, because I know it says, well, you have to read it a few times just before you get the full picture. And you said you've read it numerous times, right? I can't remember exactly how many times you said you read it.
Yeah, more than 10 times.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I remember you said something like that last time. So I have to play catch up. So there's a lot of stuff that I did miss, because I do read my books multiple times. I do go back and read a certain amount of books over and over again until I get the full message. That's why I have a lot of tabs, and I'm glad I have it on my Kindle, because it's easier to search the stuff on there. But so last time we talked about Jesus, just like we talked about today. It is interesting because he does talk about how Jesus was sent from them down the planet Earth to help us, get on track, kind of get on a good track type thing. And uh, there's a lot of, and I'm not 100% sure of how these individuals come with this conclusion, but there are people out there who believe that Jesus, Thoth, Hermes, Kokukan, Quetzalcoatl, and Krishna, they're all the same. Like, all those individuals is Jesus. And they were just in different time frames. Like, Thoth was supposedly reincarnated many times. I know we talked about that in our last video. He was reincarnated many times. And so uh and I think you said something about people just want to connect the dots and stuff like that. Do you still feel like that? Because there's a lot of people who really do believe that.
Well, I think people are just trying to explain what they cannot explain why so many people are so spiritual, like high masters, having this kind of Christ consciousness. But we have to admit that there are Christ-like figures throughout history. Like Christ was the one from Thiaoouba or the planet Thiaoouba, but Jesus was actually born from Virgin Mary. There are two different beings, one Jesus, one Christ, according to this book, Thiaoouba prophecy. There are also people who have Christ consciousness, like the Buddha, and also high spiritual masters that we have seen, like including people who, like in the ancient Chinese culture, Lao Tzu was another person, and some other may claim that Sai Baba was another person. People have different opinions on that. They're trying to connect the dots. But if you look at the whole picture, when God created every one of us, it really kind of created different kinds of people on different spiritual levels, spiritual paths. God created people like us living on category 1 planet, but God also created people who are highly spiritual, like people who have Christ consciousness. So it's a pure being is a pure spirit, God, and is spirit common to have multiple people who have Christ consciousness, but they're different beings. So I think it's important to distinguish the two.
It's funny that you brought that up about the Christ consciousness. We talked about chakras last time also, and of course you already knew that they kind of mentioned a lot of that what's in the book. That was another thing that was interesting. Seeing he was able to see different individuals' auras, like he was able to see what color their aura was, whatever color it was, and he could tell when they were in stressful moments, it would change colors or it would blink many times and stuff like that. And it was yeah. What was the favorite part of that book about you? I want to know what was that?
The favorite part would be well, two things. One is about the tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village, Japan, and the other is about well the how the world is run today. A group of financiers, and actually doing a lot of research on that aspect.
Yeah, he did talk a lot about that. He did talk a lot about that and how the government was ran and how yeah, that was interesting because yeah, that book was written what in 1989, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was then to switch to English in 93, you said. So yeah.
Mhm.
Well, see, okay, do you think those individuals are the same individuals that the ancient civilizations are talking about, like the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Mesoamericans? You know how they're like. There's this big old thing about the Anunnaki or the ancient alien theorists. Do you think these aliens were the same ones that helped build the pyramids and stuff like that?
No, I strictly follow the descriptions by the book Thiaoouba Prophecy, in which the pyramid was actually built by Thoth, a person from Atlantis.
All right.
He built it 17,000 years ago, and he had the knowledge, spiritual and material knowledge to do it. So I don't think the pyramid was built by ETs or aliens, and it's actually built by people who had the knowledge from the ancient civilizations.
So hold on, because I'm confused. So you think Thoth was just a regular individual?
It's a human being, yes, a
You
regular
think
individual, right?
okay? And why do you believe that? I'm curious
Because
because that's
it,
interesting.
yeah, he is not an ET because he came from Atlantis originally, and maybe it's due to the imagination of the people in the later years that they imagined him to be like a god-like figure because of the knowledge that he had. He was able to perform all the what we call miracles that
Mm.
people at that time couldn't perform. So they saw him as a god-like figure. So that's why they portray him as a god. But he's just a regular person. If you see like a person like a Christ-like figure walking on water and miraculously healing all the diseases and resurrecting the dead. And you would also see him as a god, kind of like figure. It's everything is about knowledge, and people who have special psychic abilities, they're just regular people um, having special psychic abilities. They're not God, they're just regular people.
So, now let me ask you this because this is a an interesting route that we're going. What is your definition of a god then?
Is a pure spirit, the creator of everything, the great ether, the kind of spirit that created the entire universe, including the stars, the planets, animals, plants, and human beings.
So you okay? So you believe that there's only one then?
Yes, only one.
Okay, all right, good. And is this based off of faith?
No, it's by fact. I mean, it's if you really look at it, the entire book, Thiaoouba Prophecy, everything is so logically explained. It makes perfect sense intuitively and also logically. It's just my gut feelings and also from additional kind of research. The Big Bang theory is to a certain extent reasonable and plausible. And I think that's indeed how the entire universe was created.
Right. That's interesting. You brought up the Big Bang Theory because that's actually my first chapter in the book that I'm writing. So, and what I learned about the Big Bang Theory is that George Lemaitre is the one who came up with the idea of the universe starting from an explosion, basically, and Fred Hoyle is actually the guy who came up with the term Big Bang. So the Big Bang term is not originally from the person that came up with the idea of the what is known as the Big Bang. It came from one of his critics. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a book that I read on my Kindle. It was one of the free books, and it was like fun facts about George Lemaitre. I guess that's how you say it. I can't. I butcher names a lot, but it is it was interesting. But you know they in that book the book I can never say that name right. Theobia, I can
Yeah,
never.
Thiaoouba.
Yeah, Thiaoouba. It was they did talk about how everything came to be and stuff like that, and how there are other multiple ETs. How many do you remember offhand? How many other ETs were there?
At least 147 different ETs in our Milky Way galaxy.
Okay,
At
yeah,
least that's the minimum number. I think it's multiple times of that number
yeah. I
because
couldn't remember.
yeah,
I know you read that. You say you read that book 10 times. So yeah, it is an interesting book. I really do recommend a lot of people, especially people who are interested in extraterrestrial aliens, that to read that book because it is a good book because like I said, you know, knocking somebody else's experience is not really helping any situation out. This person's just telling you what they did and what they experienced. I mean, you can either believe it or not believe it, or you can just be just open minded and be like, oh, that's pretty interesting. That might be possible. Um, there is a lot of stuff in there that shocked me. Like I said, there was a lot of stuff that kind of made me go, he has to be really good at what he does because it was like so many different things he knew about the ancient, like some of the ancient way of that they did things because they were colorful individuals. Like they had like you could see their aura. So he was mentioning a lot about the chakras. He was talking about their senses, like how they had more senses and their senses were more intense. And he had to wear a special helmet or mask of some sort, so that way that he
it's
wouldn't get overloaded.
it's the lights and colors that
Yeah,
they
the
have on
lights.
their planet.
Yep, the
Yeah,
lights,
the
the colors,
colors
the
and lights are
smells.
so strong.
Yeah, he
Mhm.
said the smells. The smells were
Yes.
there, and they were able to see at night because they didn't. they didn't need their natural light, like, or not natural light, artificial light, like we have, like with our light bulbs and stuff. They didn't need anything because they seen the night just as good as they seen the daytime.
Yeah.
And I can't remember. This planet was orbit. It had its own orbit over there, right? Like it didn't orbit anywhere near Earth or anything like that. It just
No,
stayed. It had its
it's
own orbit there, right? Like it never,
yes.
it was never stationary. See, so that gives me another reason why it was at Nibiru, because Nibiru was supposedly came around the sun every 3,600 years. So that's why I'm saying, like, I don't believe that Thiaoouba is Nibiru, but that, and that's part of why I do what I do, because there's a lot of people out there who say things and exaggerate things. Exaggeration doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing if you know you didn't do it, or if you did do it on purpose or whatever. It's based upon your feelings. But I know when I read something, I stick to the facts. Like there's no way I can debunk, you know, this individual who experienced this. There's no way that you can debunk it, because all we are giving is what are facts. All we can do is just tell. We can read the book, and then we can come up with a conclusion and say, okay, we believe it or we don't believe it. That's up to us. That's our personal feelings. But it doesn't take away whether he experienced it or not. If he experienced it, he experienced it. So, you know, I, there's this, I don't know if you've been watching the TV about how they've been trying to get disclosure and stuff like that. And I think in the Mexican disclosure briefings or meetings that they had, they showed the little the little a I guess the aliens. Did you see that they brought aliens to the thing? You see that? Do you think
Yes.
that's something possible, like from your personal experience? Like, do you think that stuff is possible? And if you don't think it's possible, um or if you do, it doesn't matter. um do you think it takes away from credibility, such as the person who wrote this book? And I can never say his name, so, but
Michel Desmarquet.
yeah, there you go. Do you think it takes away from credibilities from individuals like that? Because now people will be like, oh, see, we never get full disclosure. We get jokes and giggles and stuff like that.
Well, I think the Mexican disclosure event was I don't know much about it, but it doesn't seem to me to be very authentic at all, because as people just look at it as more like something that's that needs additional research. So I would say that I don't know much about it, but it requires additional research in order to validate the claim
Right,
that it
right.
came from ET. To me, I think we have to follow our heart and to see if a book has some information that resonates with your heart. And this, to me, I mean, it has to be specific, verifiable information. It doesn't do any good if it just says certain things that, oh, I found this and that is from ancient scripture and it tells about the history of mankind. I mean, that's good for information purposes, but I have to really see if the information is valid,
Yeah,
if it's verifiable by modern standards, and if it contains any other information that we can relate to, we
yeah,
can touch, we can visit, if we can really do additional research and verify such information. It's very rare for a book like this, Thiaoouba Prophecy, that covers a variety of different topics, and which in all the different fields, you can just do additional research and find out that, oh yes, indeed, there is such a thing. I can validate, I can visit, I can verify. It covers different industries and different topics. Reincarnation is one thing. You can validate and verify and prove reincarnation for a fact. And also, a lot of the information the book contains had not been discovered when the author wrote the book. about 30 years ago. So it's really interesting how he was able to know such information um, at his time, if it were not being told to him by the Vance being or ET.
Yeah. There was a question in that book, and I can't remember how it went, but it was if you could. He asked him. I think he asked him um, if you know how to save everybody, because they knew how to save everybody, right? From what I understood, they
Mm.
just didn't intervene uh, 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 as much. They would only do it at certain parts. Uh,
Yeah,
do you remember that?
I remember because they yeah they don't intervene directly for most of the times because uh, the whole purpose of humankind to live in this world is to experience the sorrows, the happiness, and the challenges in life, and to learn to respond to the challenges so that we can grow and we can grow spiritually and learn how to evolve.
Because they were they could die too and be reincarnated also, right? But they weren't always reincarnated as the same species on that planet. Am I right?
I mean, they actually can control their developments, like they can regenerate their body tissues. So if they want, they can live forever.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that like they had the power to rejuvenate their bodies and stuff like that. Is was that information or is I can't remember because like I said, I need to read it a couple of more times to get a lot more. So we definitely probably have more discussions about this because I'll definitely take some more notes. And
I
I
was
and I
hoping I was hoping you can write more about this book.
yeah, we can definitely do more discussions on this because uh or we can pick you can pick a topic that you want to talk about and I can go through my Kindle. Like I said, I have a lot of highlights on there and I'm going through some of them right now. Some of the stuff that I wrote down. Like for instance, the androgynous part when they were both masculine and feminine. Like he could tell that the extraterrestrial, I can't remember its name.
Oh,
He yeah, he could tell that that was what a female would look like because of the breast and stuff like that.
yeah,
And then later on, he found out that they had both female and male organs,
yes.
and the they were able to control the way they give birth, I believe.
Yes, they can
Like
control birth.
yeah, like they can control what comes onto the planet.
Um, they can control birth and they can certainly control other things as well.
Yeah, because that was pretty interesting because we do that in I don't know if China still does that today, but in a lot of places China was actually one of them, right? Where you can only have one child at one time, I believe.
Yeah, there's a different kind of control.
No, but what I'm saying is that that's how it starts though, right? Because they said they had millions of years of development, right? Like they basically went they basically knew what we were getting ourselves into. Like they experienced what we already did. Like for abortions and our politics and stuff like that. That's why they have the politics that they have now because they learned from their mistakes and were basically mimicking what they did. That's at least that's what I understood from the book. Did I read that mistakenly?
Well, they certainly went through the different categories of planets in their past lives. So Tao had 216 past lives already,
Yeah,
and so she definitely went through the experiences of living on a planet of sorrows. So she probably had a lot of disastrous or maybe unfortunate events on a category 1 planet. but as she evolved
That's
to a yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You just hit something. I'm
So
gonna
she
write it
evolved to a
down.
category 2, category 3, up to a category 9 planet. She had accumulated all these spiritual lessons and the knowledge to really do all the miracles as performed by Christ. So she no longer had to go through all the sufferings that we have been undergoing.
You reminded me of something. The category planets one. What do you understand that? Do you think those were different planets? Is that what you understand?
Those are just different kind of levels or categories of planets. So depending on the spiritual development and spiritual maturity, people are categorized based on certain spiritual advancements. So people, yeah, the planets are categorized too. So a person can decide to um, live on a lower category of planet, um, and but also can live on the same category as his or her spiritual advancement. So, for example, if a person has a category 3 spiritual advancement, he or she can live on category 3 planet, and but can also live on category 2 or category 1 planet. Um, they can go down but cannot go up.
But
Like they can live on a lower category of planet but cannot live on higher category of planets.
uh,
Um,
so if
so
there are
so
three, they can live at two or one if they want to.
yeah, 3, 2, or 1.
Yeah.
If there are five, they can live on 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but they cannot live on 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you do you think that they were extra different planets, like
Yeah, they're
separate
different
planets?
planets.
Okay, because see, when we was talking about the Book of Enoch earlier, the Book of Enoch, I think it calls it 10 heavens. I believe it's 10 heavens, and the 10th one is supposed to be where God is
Yeah.
supposed to reside at. Is that the same thing in that book that you got the impression of?
Yes. We have a total of 9 categories of planets that we can live on. Um, but the 10th category will be God, the top, the source. So there are a total of 10 layers that we have to go through.
Yeah, that was kind of what were reminding me about the Book of Enoch when they was mentioning the different categories of planets and stuff. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. It sounds like what when Enoch talked about when he went to the different planets, different number of planets, because I think they just called it a planet like 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 10, and the 10th one was where God resided at, or where he was at, and so on and so forth. But what I do know is that the Book of Enoch, it's all in visions. Like it's something that happens in his mindset, in his mind. Like I don't know if it's during a drug trip or a psychedelic trip or what or if he actually got abducted, because it really does kind of mimic what was described there, because that's actually what caught my mind when I read it out. The first thing I was like, oh man, that's one of the first things that I wanted to talk about, and I wrote it right here, but I think I scratched out the wrong one because I had scratched out that question instead of the other one. And so because you said that you think that Enoch was probably there before, right? Like um he was there first, and then yeah, I can never say that guy's name right.
Michel Desmarquet.
Yeah, and you think he came after Enoch, right?
I
Um,
think
do you who do you think came before Enoch? Do you think that you have an idea of individual? Because um, it's obvious that there's messengers that have been given, that were here for us and stuff like that. So I was just curious.
I think before Enoch, they also came to Earth. So in the book, it talks about the ancient civilization Lemuria
Yeah.
uh, in the Pacific Ocean. So at that time, because the Lemurians were living a very spiritualized spiritual life, with the greatest civilizations that ever occurred on Earth. So they came to establish direct contact with the Lemurians. So they actually helped the Lemurians to colonize other parts of the world. I mean, it's just a fact of the history. I mean, it's very interesting that according to this book, the blacks and the yellows, and they intermixed to become what's now the Middle Easterns.
Yeah.
So, and the Caucasians and the blacks and the yellows mixed together and to became the Berbers, the North Africans, some of the North African tribes, tribal people. So people did intermix, but it didn't happen on the original planet where they came from, Bakaratini. So
Yeah.
on the planet Bakaratini, the blacks and the yellows never intermixed.
All right. So that was just here on planet Earth, then.
Yes.
And that's
So it's a
why.
very
And
interesting phenomenon. Yeah.
so I think in the book, the first planet they landed on, it was like it was ran by insects, right? I think it was.
There were insects trying to eat people.
Yeah, yeah, and they literally had people on there. They didn't really describe how they looked or whatnot, but there were people still living on that planet, and they would
They
have.
actually described how because that planet was called Arimo X3 that
Yeah,
just
and
had the
Remo X3.
atomic explosion or disaster about 150 years ago. So people there were deformed
Yeah,
and then because of the radiation. And because of the radiation, there are also insects that grew very large and became very dangerous due to the mutations. And the Theubans kind of decimated and in order to keep the people, the human beings safe on the planet.
yeah. So was everybody were basically a type of a mutation from the nuclear, or do you think there were some people that were saved? Because I can't remember if they said that they had some actually people who survived it pretty well.
There are people who survived the nuclear explosion, but they all had some kind of nuclear side effects,
Okay.
radiation, and also other things. Yeah,
Okay, yeah, because I do remember that, like something that happened like in Japan with the bombings and with the Hiroshima and Nagasaki and stuff like that. So yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I'm gonna have to read that book again and go through it and see um what else we could talk about because
yeah.
it
What
is
do you
good.
think about the what do you think about the content in the sense of what you read so far from the books written by other authors? Any things that you find correspond to the books that you read so far, or different, very
Yeah.
different from
w-
what you have read?
Yeah, well, the stuff that was talked about Jesus, it was very interesting because it talked
Mhm.
about biblical times and stuff like that. And I know that there was a time frame where we didn't know where or who Jesus was. We didn't know exactly what he was doing. He's just like a missing link in his life, and then he came
Yeah,
back. So they talked about that, and then it talked about the when you was mentioning about the key that was in Japan. That's interesting because from my studies, Jesus did travel on that side of the world. I mean, he traveled everywhere. I mean, that's he learned from everybody. That's why he was so knowledgeable. He literally learned from everybody. He took knowledge from everywhere. And then I really thought the book was interesting because, like I said, it's a sincere book. Somebody took time to write a book based on their experience that they were told to do something, just like the ancient texts. Like the when you read the book of Enoch, Enoch was given instructions to write certain amount of books to bring back to tell, humanity here about what he should do and what he shouldn't do and what we need to do better and stuff like that. And he was basically giving us information, just like how the guy and the author of Thiaoouba, that's how he got his information. So I thought it was a really great book because it detailed exactly what I would think that an abduction like that would be. Uh, there, mathematically there has to be some aliens or extraterrestrials out there. Um, it just has to be. I mean, mathematically, it has to be. And
Yeah,
um, my thing is most of my studies and what I liked a lot about this book is because it was interesting not only because it was alien abduction or whatnot, but because my ancient studies and what I've learned is that people really do believe that there's a planet out there. Now, I say this all the time. If they ever find another planet out there that has aliens on there, the first thing they're going to call it is Nibiru. Everybody's going to call it Nibiru only because of Zachariah Sitchin made a big old fuss about it. But if this individual, the author of Thiaoouba, if what if it's really actually called Thiaoouba? You know what I mean? What is that? What if that's the actual name of the planet, and the Sumerians and Egyptians and all of them knew about it, but they didn't describe it in their ancient texts like everybody thinks they did. You know what I mean? Like maybe we're on the wrong path
yeah,
or something, giving credit to something that's not really there. You know
exactly.
what I mean?
Exactly. This is why I'm so eager to talk to you um, as early as possible. Is that I think to me it's important to follow um, the writings that can be verified, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
The more I read into the book Field of Prophecy, the more I realize that like almost every single fact can be proven nowadays. And we have something to relate to and to really cross-check, cross-reference, and to see whether the information is authentic and truthful. And so far, I have found no faults of the author's information,
Right.
including including information that might be inconsistent with the conventional scientific community, in which I would find the information contained in the book is more reasonable and plausible, and the conventional wisdoms of the current scientific community might be wrong, just like what they did 400 years ago, claiming that the Earth was the center of the universe or something like that. So I think this book is something that deserves more attention and time to do additional research.
Right, right, right. No, I agree with you. And uh, like I said, like the reason why I asked a lot of the questions that I asked is because it does talk about the politics of today. You know, you see all the, the different activists out there. I don't even need to name them, but we already know who all they are. We have, what's going on in China. We know what's going on in Africa and Russia and so on and so forth, and all this stuff played a part. And you said that you haven't found any fault in this author, and that's awesome. I mean, you. It sounds like you was trying to really figure out what this author was talking about, and reading it 10 times. That's a lot of times to read a book. And the
And I know people who have read more times than me. They
maybe
read
we
it
should
like
all have a discussion then.